Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Are there any people who are here for the first time? Over there. Okay, well, welcome. We're going to go around the room and say our names. I'm Bob.
Right.
Will.
Mike.
Justin.
George.
Snake.
Howard.
Colin. Ed.
Frank.
Jim.
David.
Peter.
Jack.
Buzz. Peter.
Joaquin.
Bill.
And Michael.
That's Roger.
And I'm Bill.
And I'll introduce. Bill's our speaker today.
Nothing to miss.
Bill Weber is a senior Vipassana student who is currently training in the Community Dharma Leaders Program at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He's also a film editor and director. He co-directed the award-winning documentary The Coquettes.
Well, thank you all. I think this is like the third time I've spoken here. This doesn't amplify, does it? This amplifies. And I was thinking earlier about the Coquettes, and the Coquettes is really sort of the great anti-Dharma film. If you want to learn about how to break as many precepts as possible, to throw out any sort of moderation around intoxicants and sexuality, and to certainly throw out right speech, and and they were great thieves. They stole like mad, so they took freely things that weren't given. So it's a great anti-Dharma film. That's a little plug for the movie. I think they had in the newsletter that I was going to speak. Clint asked me to speak a while ago, and I said I would speak about mindfulness and the breath. And at the time, that was a fairly rich place of practice for me. But this being Buddhism, things change. And so I decided a few weeks ago that I was actually going to talk about something different. And I hope that's okay with everybody. But I want to talk about something that's very dear to me and very near to my heart, and something that really connects me with this practice. And as I speak today, I really want to speak from a place of the heart, and not so much from my head, which is often where I speak from. So I might pause every so often and just try to reconnect with my heart. So if you find me pausing for a bit, you might take that moment to also check in with your own heart and see what's going on with you. What I want to talk about is taking refuge, which is such a basic part of the foundation of Buddhism, is taking refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. I ask you all to take a moment and just consider what attracts you to the Buddhist path. Do you consider yourself a Buddhist, and why? I know for myself, about 10 years ago, somebody gave me a book on Buddhism, and I read it, and it was like, it spoke to me so clearly. And it spoke to me in a way that, yes, I believe this. Yes, I know this in some ways to be true. I know these teachings to ring true for me. And in many ways, I consider myself a seeker of the truth, and of also just wanting to connect with this life. and Buddhism just seemed to do it for me. And pretty much from that point on, I've considered myself a Buddhist. I don't know if many of you, I'm sure we come from many different levels of study and understanding and depth of knowledge about the practice. But I imagine a lot of you have heard about the taking of refuge in the three jewels, in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. The three jewels are the foundation of this whole practice. When we sit, I notice that you ring the bell 3 times. It's a reminder. It's the Buddha, it's the Dharma, it's the Sangha. These are things we can take refuge in, and this is what I want to talk about. The taking of refuge in the three jewels is common in all the Buddhist practice. And Suzuki Roshi would do it over at the Zen Center. Trungpa Rinpoche would do it at Naropa in the 70s. And it goes back to the time of the Buddha. It's common to all practices. It's one of the things, that and the 4 foundations of mindfulness is one of the areas where we all Buddhist traditions come together. The first formal step on a Buddhist path is taking refuge in the three jewels. It happens at the beginning of retreats. It happens when a monk takes robes. It can happen at Buddhist ceremonies. It can happen when you go into a monastery. It can also happen at the beginning of a sit. People can do it when they sit down. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I want to talk about this in ways that can hopefully give you a better understanding of some of the tradition, but also in ways that can be useful in your connection with Buddhism and in just daily life, because there are ways that taking refuge on this path holds us and protects us and can be of great comfort to us. The dictionary defines refuge as protection or shelter, as from danger or hardship, a place of providing this protection and shelter, and a source of help, relief, or comfort. Having a place of relief and comfort and shelter and protection isn't a bad thing in our lives. It can really be of great help. The UN recently declared that after 50 years ago they adopted a UN Convention on Refugees. And this decade we live in now has seen more of the world's people than ever before seeking refuge from war, persecution, or disaster. You don't have to go far to see the fact that there's refugees all over the planet. The UN estimates that there are 21.1 million refugees worldwide right now. Well, this is a certain flavor of refugee, the people that are running from war, persecution, or disaster. I think as gay men, we also are a certain type of refugee. And I think many of us came to San Francisco as refugees. And in a sense, San Francisco has served as a haven for refugees, as a refugee camp of sort for gay men. For many years, for 150 years probably. So what are we seeking refuge from? I think a lot of us came from places where we felt persecuted, where we felt unsafe, where we felt like we needed to hide a bit. We needed to be someplace where we were amongst like-minded people. We needed a community. I know that's true for myself. When I first came out of the closet, I thought, I have to move to San Francisco. That's where you go if you're gay. This big refugee camp. And I've also thought about where we as gay men go as places of refuge in our lives. I was talking with my partner about this the other day, and I said, where do we go for comfort? Where do we go for shelter and protection, or to feel a part of something? And the obvious things like the bars and the gym, sometimes sex and alcohol, drugs, relationships. And my boyfriend reminded me, we also go for shopping and for in the search of pretty things for our house and stuff like this. Places we go to find shelter, to find comfort, to find like we connect with something. The question that a Buddhist practice asks of us is, how secure are these refugees? How secure are these places to go for refuge? What sort of security are they offering us? So, I ask you again to reflect for a moment. What is safe and secure in your life? What can you depend on? What can you truly depend on? I know I take a lot of comfort and I depend a lot on my relationship, on my job, on my house, on my friendships. None of them are that. I almost hesitate to say it, but none of them are that solid. My relationship feels really solid, but my partner could be right out now meeting somebody who's really fantastic, and I go home and he says, "Sorry, it's done." My job is very very unstable these days. The company I work for is going through a lot of financial trouble right now. I could be without a job in no time. This body that I depend on is changing rapidly. There aren't many places where we can really say, okay, I'm safe here. I can rest here. There's some comfort and security in this. This will be around. This will hold me. We sort of depend on nature, but we live in a town where earthquakes happen. And I don't know if many of you were here for some earthquakes. It really shakes up your dependence on the fact that the earth is a stable place. Boy, what's going on with the Republican regime right now? America seems very unstable to me right now. Our country, just in terms of the direction we're going and the apparent following of so many people in this direction. I find it hard to connect with being an American these days. So we're drawn along, and we can be feeling secure in the midst of our comforts, but we're really like men walking across a frozen lake, believing ourselves safe while the ice is cracking underneath. Things are constantly changing around us. So we live on very shaky ground, or breaking ice. Joseph Goldstein, a great Theravadan teacher that teaches out of Massachusetts, said at a talk I was at recently that the nature of our lives is like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, which is a pretty scary, precarious position. But he said that's a problem until the Buddhist path helps us realize that there is no ground. So we're jumping out of a plane without a parachute, but there's no ground. So there's not a whole lot to worry about. This is part of what finding refuge in the Buddhist path is about. Finding safety, comfort, and protection in the midst of impermanence. Finding equanimity in a home in the house of uncertainty. This is taking refuge in the Buddhist path. it was mentioned earlier that I've been in this training program at Spirit Rock, and it's a 2.5-year program where 60 of us from around the country have been taught to help bring the Dharma into our communities. And we just had our last training session. It finished a week ago today. And we actually graduated. I actually have a diploma now, which is sort of a silly thing and a very impermanent thing. But no, it actually meant a lot to me in many ways. But at the beginning of this retreat, we took refuge again in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha, and it just spoke to me so much. It just connected again. It helped me connect again to something that was bigger than myself and something bigger than what I normally find myself dealing with in day to day, and connecting to something that I find to be rich in the truth. So we take refuge in the Buddha. And I want to talk about the 3 refuges pretty fast, and then I'll finish it up and we'll time for discussion. So to take refuge in the Buddha can mean a lot of things. We're taking refuge in the person, the Buddha, the Buddha who found awakening in this human life, the ability to awaken, the ability to be enlightened, the ability not to suffer in this human life. So we take refuge in the Buddha, the person. We also take refuge in the potential for freedom from suffering, which is the birthright of us all. I also find that when I take refuge in the Buddha, I'm taking refuge in the way things are, the truth. To take refuge in wisdom and clarity, wisdom and compassion. To take refuge in the fact that this is my true home. To take refuge in the Dharma is to take refuge in the teachings of the Buddha, the path, the experience of each moment, and the endeavoring to live by the truth of that experience. It's also to take refuge in the Dharma is also to take refuge in the awareness unobscured by greed, hate, and delusion. To take refuge in the Sangha, this is a really rich one. Traditionally, it means to take refuge amongst people that have committed themselves to practice, to take refuge in a monastery amongst monks. But to take refuge in the Sangha is really a much bigger picture. Last night I was lucky enough to take part in a dinner at a shelter that's been going on monthly, that's run out of GBF for, 7-8 years now probably, at a homeless shelter. Members of GBF go to a homeless shelter once a month and do a dinner for homeless families. And there were 9 of us there last night. And it's a real function of Sangha. It's a real coming together as a community to do something that's bigger than yourself and to do something of service that can be of service to other people. It's a real function of Sangha. It's to take part in the community of people that also are looking for something larger, looking to connect with the truth. And the idea of Sangha can even be expanded much bigger than that. It's the community of beings. It's all of us. It's knowing that we're connected and that we're not only connected, but that we aren't separate from life. And when you take refuge in the Sangha, it's taking refuge in all of life, is another way to look at it. Because we all are connected. It can be very inspiring to know that others are dedicated to living the Buddha's teachings through their ethics, mindfulness, and compassion. To have the example and guidance of such people can be phenomenally encouraging. And that's also what I think can happen here in a Sangha like GBF. There's a support for each other. for this understanding and for this growth. There's a wonderful website that I don't know if you know about called Access to Insight. And it's basically the Theravadan teachings on a website. And it's accesstoinsight.com. And if you get on there, you can type in any sort of keywords you want, and the teachings are there for you. So the teachings are, on your computer all the time. But I was going in and reading about taking refuge the other day, and they had this beautiful quote that I want to share. The mind of equanimity, poised beyond the play of worldly opposites, is the highest safety and security. But to gain this equanimity, we stand in need of guidance. The guidance available cannot protect us from objective adversity, which basically means this guidance can't protect us from sickness, old age, and death, natural disasters, things like that. It can only safeguard us from the dangers of a negative response, from anxiety, sorrow, frustration, and despair. This is the only protection possible. And because it grants us this essential protection, such guidance can be considered a genuine refuge. A genuine refuge. It's a beautiful thing. And it's basically a protection from a negative response. We are going to get sick. We are going to get old. We are going to die. There are going to be great sorrows that are going to come to us. What taking refuge in the Dharma can offer us is a protection from a negative response to it. That we can be there with the truth of what is in a really deep way and allow it. It's a tricky one. I mean, right now I'm experiencing a little bit of doubt around, am I being clear about my passion for this and about the taking refuge of itself? And that doubt is there. It just comes up out of the conditioning of this moment for me and past conditioning. So I have doubt. Can I be with that fully? Or am I going to have aversion to it? Am I going to say, I don't want this now. I'm suffering now because I have this doubt. Or can it just be doubt, tightness of chest, maybe feeling a bit smaller? It's just doubt. And it too is going to pass. To really take refuge in the practice is to open to it all. To jump out of a plane without a parachute and just fall. Just fall. A little bit about the sort of formal practice of taking refuge. I imagine many of you have done it. If you've gone on to a retreat, it's often the way we start a retreat. One of my teachers, Gil Fronsdal, says, taking refuge is one of the most common rituals a lay practitioner performs in Theravada Buddhism. While it is done as a matter of course at ceremonies, during retreats, and when visiting a temple, it can be a pivotal I can't say that. Pivotal. Okay, I'll be with this. Pivotal moment when, for the first time, one takes refuge with the conscious intent of orienting one's life in accordance to one's deepest values and aspirations. The conscious intent of orienting one's life in accordance to one's deepest values and aspirations. It helps solidify a wide foundation of trust and respect from which the entire practice can grow. If one has seriously become convinced of the truth of the Buddhist teachings and wishes to follow the teachings, it is preferable, when possible, to conform to the prescribed way of going for refuge that has come down from the Buddhist tradition. The formal way, as I have practiced taking refuge, is first I look inside at my intent, and then to bow 3 times, to bow to the Buddha, and to say to myself each time, I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Often when I do this, I try to open up and let whatever feelings are there just come out. And sometimes I also change the word a bit. And instead of saying Buddha, I can say, I take refuge in the truth. And instead of Dharma, I take refuge in the teachings of the truth. And in the Sangha, I take refuge in those seeking to follow the truth. So I invite you all to look and experiment with yourself and open up to what rings true for you, what rings true about this practice for you, and why you find yourself coming to Buddhist gatherings and sits and talks. And to try to open up and take refuge in that and to connect to it. Because this is really about connecting to this practice. To again and again orient one's life in accordance to one's deepest values and aspirations. I love that. It's a beautiful practice. It's something you can do at the beginning of a morning sit. It's something that you can do throughout the day. If you find yourself in a difficult situation, something that is causing you great pain or something, it's like, how can I take refuge in some of the truths of my practice? How can I open to this fully? How can I find safety and comfort and a home in the midst of this, and something I maybe don't like much at all? It's where am I really safe? Where am I really held? Where are things really secure? When we align ourselves with the 3 jewels again, it's really about going inside and aligning ourselves with our heart again. I want to read something from Ajahn Chah. And I brought a book of Ajahn Chah's, and there's actually a wonderful picture of this very happy Thai forest monk who was probably one of the great meditation teachers of the 20th century and was also the teacher of Jack Kornfield. One of the beautiful things about this practice, and especially this practice that we're privileged to in the Bay Area, is the connection we have to the teachings and to the teachers. Buddhist traditions are handed down. It's an oral tradition. It's handed down from teacher to student from the time of the Buddha. And I was thinking, here's Ajahn Chah, one of the great meditation teachers of the 20th century, and he transmitted to Jack, and Jack can transmit to us here in the Bay Area. It's a very close connection to really powerful teachings. We're really privileged, and it also gave me a sense of really deep connection to the teachings themselves and the really rich oral tradition that they're handed down from teacher to student. Little side story. Anyway, back to the fact that the jewels, it's coming back to the 3 jewels is coming back to our own heart. These are Ajahn Chah's words. So the Buddha said to find your refuge. This means find your real heart. The heart is very important. People don't usually look at important things. They spend most of their time with unimportant things. For example, when they do their house cleaning, they may be bent on sweeping floors, washing the dishes, and so on, but they fail to notice their own hearts. Their hearts may be rotten. They may be feeling angry. And they're washing the dishes wearing a sour expression. That their hearts are not very clean, they fail to see. This is what I call taking a temporary shelter for a refuge. They beautify house and home, but they don't think of beautifying their own hearts. They don't examine suffering. The Buddha taught us to find a refuge within our own hearts. Make yourself a refuge unto yourself. Who else can be your refuge? The true refuge is the heart, nothing else. You may try to depend on other things, but they aren't dependable. You can only depend on other things if you already have a refuge within yourself. A refuge within yourself, to me, really speaks of going back to accepting each moment the way it is and truly opening to our experience, the truth of this moment. Well, I hope I've imparted some of my passion for this practice of taking refuge, of bowing to the three jewels, of holding these three jewels and of returning to them throughout the day, and to finding some protection there. And now I'd like to open it up for comments, discussion, questions. And I'd also really welcome other people's experience with the three jewels, if they'd like to share that, and how it might have touched or affected them.
Thank you very much for your talk. I really enjoyed it and appreciated that. I love the idea of dedicating yourself again and again to what is best in you. I think that's really nice. I wanted to ask you about the metaphor of jumping out of a plane without a parachute, which to me is about as terrifying a thing as I can imagine. And so when I heard you talk about that, I wasn't sure that I quite got it. To me it feels like it's there's a quality of surrender, but jumping out of a plane without a parachute feels more suicidal or something. So I didn't get it.
Right.
Risk and terror.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but there are parts of this path that I have found very horrific sometimes, or terrifying. The one in particular is the no self. I find that when I first heard that, I was really pissed. I mean, it was like, don't tell me there's no self. I know me. There's a self here. I've softened around that. But I just bring that up because there are certain aspects to this path and these teachings that go very much against the grain of sort of the way we're brought up, especially in the West. So part of it is very terrifying. And the fact that that all of this is impermanent, that nothing's stable, that it's all going to fall away, is a bit of a terrifying thing to live with. So it is. That's why I like that metaphor so much. I wouldn't jump out of a plane with a parachute. let alone without a parachute. The idea of jumping out of a plane with a parachute terrifies me. So, but that's sort of what's called upon us to do, and there is that beautiful, I have a sense of that beautiful knowledge of that there is no ground. There's no place to land. So everything's okay. It's not suicidal then. It's free fall. I don't know what's going to happen next, although I think I do. I think I know I'm going to get on my bicycle and go home and this is going to happen and that's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen next. The more I can open to free fall into that, the more I'm truly with this moment, the more I'm here now, the more receptive I am to what's here now. The more alive I am, in a sense, to what's going on. And it's terrifying sometimes. Which is really why I love that metaphor. Really stuck with me when I heard Joseph say that. But it's really beautiful just to say, there's such a sense of freedom and like falling forever. To me, that's also beautiful. Just like flying through space. You're going through the clouds. It really felt free to me. So, thank you.
I'm Justin. Thank you very much for your talk. Do you have a sense of the presence of the Buddha when you meditate? Or is it the idea? Is it the experience of the idea of the Buddha in that sense? Do you feel like the Buddha is in the room with you when you meditate?
Personally, no. Not so much. That's an interesting question, but... Part of me feels almost like the Buddha could be a myth. And that's okay. Because the teachings are so rich and so lovely and so full and so deep. And the fact that they are 2,500 years old blows me away. Because to me they speak of so much that I intellectually believe in and that I've personally experienced and that just seems to me to be true. And that's where my main connection to the path is. I mean, to me, the Buddha was a molecular biologist 2,500 years before people knew what molecules were. Yeah.
Two remarks, which are not really questions, but support.
Please.
Supporting comments. The importance of refuge. We're in a room, as most of you know, that is owned or rented or something by the Friends of the World of Western Buddhist Order, and the founder of that, Venerable Maharstudy of Sangha Lassiter, to name but a few, he has said the experience of Buddhism is the experience of constantly taking refuge. So it's not something that we do once and then it's over with. It's constant. We're constantly in refuge, and I find that a striking remark when I read that. And I hadn't heard this simile by Joseph of falling out of an airplane, but although he's teaching from the Theravada tradition, I thought of the Heart Sutra and the Dharma Sutra, which says that the Bodhisattva is unsupported by anything, and also that when the Bodhisattva hears the teaching of emptiness, or as I call it, transparency, he or she is unafraid. I think that is because I'm only afraid of something if there's a need to be hurt, and if the me is experienced as empty of inherent existence, then there isn't anything to be hurt. So even if there is ground and it goes squash, it's not me. There isn't a me that goes squash.
Thank you for that. And yes, taking refuge is constant. Or it certainly has that potential, or that's one thing it asks of us, I think. So I thank you for bringing that in. Please.
Hi. Well, thank you for your talk. It struck me deeply. And one of the things that I've been struggling with increasingly as I get older is about death, and in particular non-existence. And so the metaphor of jumping out of the plane struck me also strongly, and it reminds me also when I've been taking plane flights recently. Every once in a while we hit sort of heavy turbulence, and while I know the pilots think this is nothing to worry about, there's nevertheless the feeling of the ground falling away as the plane sinks, and feelings of terror. And I respond to that around the Buddhist principles around acceptance and non-existence. So as we contemplate this issue of non-existence, and as Justin responded to it initially, it strikes me that some of the possible reactions are terror, which we may have, denial, I'm not really going to die, acceptance, it's okay. And what I see is the Buddhist one of, well, there is really no self, there is no ground, therefore I don't die, and I also don't live. It's sort of the wrong question in the sense to ask about dying. The question is, what makes me think that I was born? And the paradox that I run into, the paradox of sentience, I would call it, is that if this is really not a problem, and I really, was never born, I don't exist, then what is this illusion of suffering that I feel?
Right, but you're also, one thing I was hearing is that there can be multiple experiences that are real. There is the experience of terror. There is the experience of acceptance. There is the experience of fear that are very real at that time. I would say they do exist for a moment. One thing I love about this practice is that it asks us to open to that. What is this? What is terror? Where is it in the body? Where do I feel it? What's this emotion? Where does it go? And then notice when it's gone. Just to add on to what I was hearing you say. Yeah, thanks.
I can speak to the terror of having many years ago jumped out of the airplane without a parachute. And it was about 2 years. Horrible, an experience of absolute terror many times. Or a couple of times I thought, I'm going to have myself committed. Other times, a continuous fear for long periods of time. Luckily, I never missed a day's work during all of this entire period. Having been part of the cult of psychology, of course, I could come up with words like pathological disintegration and malignant anxiety. That's the thing that, you got to. But I can really speak to the absolute terror over that period of time. And luckily, I had friends and a support group, none of whom understood it in the slightest, but who were willing to put up with it because I've always been a little weird. And the remarkable thing about it was not so much a jump as a flight, giving things up, letting go of my ego, letting go of the words and labels that I put on myself, and to see myself vanish in front of my own eyes was absolutely awesome. To see that there just wasn't anybody home, and whoever it was who jumped or whatever just kind of vanished. And at the end of that period, the feeling of release. There are other experiences, the Jungians, for example, the Nekia, descent into the darkness and coming back out of it. And in the Christian and other traditions, dying only to be reborn. The record of a lot of those experiences is that they're absolutely terrifying. And some of my Jungian friends have gone through Nekia. It's terrifying. So I now feel it's just an experience that's open to everybody and that just happens cross-culturally and that practically everybody's done it. And Ken Wilber, of course, talks about it, so you know it's right.
But so you...
And it's just the giving of that all up, to find out there's no plane, there's no jumper, there's just the enormous release of there not being anybody. And the only thing solid and dependable is Pun, P-U-N. It's, I can't remember.
It vanished too.
At any rate, it's just what people refer to when they say background witness, that which witnesses everything. The thing that you're really looking for is whatever it is that's looking. That permanent without any kind of permanence whatsoever. It's just some kind of awareness. There's something that's absolutely dependable over and over again that can't be named or labeled or anything else, but it's there. And all you have to do is just, suffer.
When I was hearing you talk, what I was really hearing is the fact that you found refuge in this practice a lot. You were really talking about finding a place of safety and a home, and you did it.
Chopping vegetables yesterday.
Yeah, you did it really well. So thank you. And the vegetable chopping, but no, that's what it's about. But I mean, you're also talking about things that aren't easy. Letting go of self, letting go of getting out of this world of, I want more of this, I'll be happier. I don't want more of that, I'll be happier. It's just the way I find myself living all the time. More of this, I'll be happy. Less of that, I'll be happy. I got to be happy this. So you talk about a deep letting go, which isn't easy, but which is a refuge, which is a place of safety and comfort if you can, when you taste that. And this world of trying to find safety and comfort in things that aren't dependable and that fall away doesn't work so well. So I'm trying to weave it back to refugees here. Which you did really nice. Do we close it?
Could we just have one more question?
Please. I just wanted to see how much more time. Great.
I just wanted to share a dream I had several years ago. I fell out of a plane, and I knew this was it, and I wasn't, I was anticipating. But I wasn't terrified. I said, I got to go to my practice. And I sat in the lotus, which I can't really do. In my dream, I did. Just went into that space and fell and realized I must have hit the ground somehow.
refuge sounds really solid to me. And I experience the things that I take refuge in as being very solid.
Like?
Silence, friendship, connections. I mean, are we not connected? Is that not solid? Does that not exist? I'm going nuts here today.
Right. Right.
I have, people I'd love to die. I still miss them. Who am I missing?
Right.
Who's doing the missing? Who's taking the refuge? Is this a language problem I'm having? Or am I just so not a Buddhist I shouldn't be here?
Right. Right. No.
I feel like my brain is splitting. It so does not jive with my experience of being a human being. And yet this inner silence that I love here, totally, I get. Well, for next time...
Let me just address a couple of things quickly. When you're talking about connection and community, that's taking refuge in the Sangha.
But isn't that real? Isn't that solid?
Yeah, well, solid, I don't know.
Isn't that palpable or experienceable?
It's wholesome. It supports a deeper understanding. It supports a better practice. It is connecting, and in that way, it is real. We are all connected. There is. I mean, this is. Yeah. This is my combination of ignorance and wisdom speaking. We are all connected, and that is a place to take refuge. The fact that we share life. If you say the silence in the room, if you take refuge in that, and then all of a sudden, a jackhammer goes off outside, it's not a really safe place to take refuge in that sense. But a deep inner silence, sure, that is not dependent on outside conditions, that is dependent on a true equanimity, a true understanding. That's a great place to take refuge. But the silence of a room, not so good. Somebody starts flushing the toilet up above, bang, it's gone. But this investigation's great. Don't beat yourself up. Don't struggle with it. But just say, where am I safe? Where do I go for safety? How secure is it? How much does it connect? And how much can I really rest here and be safe here? These are great places of investigation. If I stirred up a bit of that, dynamite. That's great.
Thank you, Bill. Could we have announcements? Yes.
The steering committee meeting, I was reminded, is today, and Paul, who was to facilitate it, is not here, but we still need to have a meeting, and so there are a couple of us at least that need to leave fairly promptly, so the meeting will start in this room in 5 minutes after we end. So, if you want to get tea or go to the bathroom or whatever.
Yes.
And fortuitously, the subject that we're going to be talking about is the refuge ceremony, which will be next month. So if people want to...
What a lead-in.
If people have ideas about it, you don't need to be on the steering committee. Just please come and express what you'd like to see. Okay.
I'm the host for today, and there's goodies and tea outside. Please clean your cup. You drink tea, and there's a Dharma bowl. And Judy depends on the generosity of all of us. And we have a $5 suggested donation, but more if you can, and less if that's a problem.
Do you have an announcement?
Yeah. My friend Larry Yang is leading a day-long workshop on August 16th of loving kindness and compassion practice for men. And it will be held here, actually, and I'm going to leave some flyers for it outside. So if you get a chance or are interested, please check it out.
There's also a sign-up sheet outside for new people who would like to get on the mailing list or the email.
Yes, George.
And a reminder that talks are available on the internet at the GBF website, gaybuddhist.org.
Okay, should we stand in a circle? And Bill, you.
May our practice here today together, may our effort and intent, may it be for the benefit of all beings everywhere. May all beings find refuge, a place of safety, a home. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings know great peace.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.